Hey everybody, welcome to my 250 subscriber special video. Um, yeah, sorry it took so late though. um, yeah, I want to apologize because the whole month of May just, like, it started out with me working on this thing, and then some stuff kind of came in the way which caught me off guard, and, so it just kind of snowballed and made it so that my whole thing was messed up. Yeah, I had some personal stuff kind of going on that got in the way. One thing I kind of don't want to talk about right now, and then also, like, yeah, I was out for a week because of it, and then I was out for another week because I got sick. Like, I had a huge migraine, I had a cold, all that stuff. It was bad. But yeah, we're finally here now. Oh god. Oh jeez. Oh man, I can't believe it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video that's about to start. So without further ado, let's get on with it, I guess.
Yes, get on with it!
Since I started this channel, I always kept thinking about how I was going to tackle certain versions of particular games. Remakes and remasters were never an issue for me since it was the same game overall, but what about the games that share a title but end up being a completely different experience? You know what I'm talking about, right? You go to the store and pick up a game only to find out that it wasn't anything like you thought it was. During the history of gaming, this has always been common when it came to multi-platform titles. I mean, take something like Green Lantern, for example. This was a game that had its moments of enjoyment for me, but the complete package was a title I felt should have been best left forgotten. I liked the God of War style of gameplay, and I dug using the given constructs to spice up combat, but the repetition and almost annoying structure is what made me like it less and less as I kept going. When I first played this as a kid, I enjoyed myself mostly, so I was expecting to have a solid time coming back to it. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and the playthrough I did for the LP channel didn't make things any better. Otherwise, it was a game that I would classify as mediocre at best, and at worst is nothing horrible, but it's something I never want to think about again. Now, you might be familiar with this version, but have you ever thought about this version right here? Well, with this series, we're going to look into that. Welcome to a little playlist that I would like to call So before we begin proper, I just want to note for this video that I'm only focusing on the Wii version exclusively. Not to say that I don't want to cover the others, but there's not that much difference between them generally. The 3DS version is basically the Wii port on a handheld, and the DS counterpart is an even more downscaled version. There's also an iOS version, but I'm going to be talking about it briefly near the end of the video. Also, for people wondering if I'm ever going to do a revisited for the HD version down the line, no. Anyway, this game was developed by Kryptonite, whose notable work includes some Marvel Superhero Squad games and the 3DS Shinobi. But they've also done a ton of ports like Spider-Man Web of Shadows and Shattered Dimensions on the DS, which are fantastic, and some MCU stuff like the Captain America Super Soldier and Iron Man 2 game for handhelds. I couldn't find much for the development of this game, so let's just segue into the story, I guess. The plot is relatively the same as the other versions. The Manhunters are attacking the universe, and it's up to you, Hal Jordan Green Lantern, to put a stop to it. They removed Amon Sur and disregarded the whole traitor subplot, so what we have is just an even more bare-bones version of the HD game story. Nothing happens along your journey. You go to the required planet, take out the invading force, and just move on your merry way. There's no character development, no interesting side plot thrown in for the hell of it, there's just nothing, and it's so lame. They have these bits of dialogue between characters, but it just feels like an afterthought. Maybe they were trying to go for a Saturday morning cartoon approach, which feels appropriate given the game's art style, but even that isn't executed well. In fact, it isn't even executed at all. Kudos to the HD version for having some type of storylines to keep me interested, even if those suck too. Other than that, there's just nothing else to talk about here, so I'm going to do you a favor and just move on. Now onto the gameplay, and this is definitely different. Instead of the God of War styled hack and slash, we now have a Metroidvania inspired 2D side-scroller. It probably could have stayed a character action game, but I'm not mad that they decided to switch up the approach. Since Kryptonite was working on this game for 3 systems at once, they probably wanted something that was less time consuming to work with. One thing to note that the game fills you in right away is that there's multiple control schemes to fit with whatever playstyle you have. For this video I went with the Classic Controller Pro, but I did try out the Wii Remote and that wasn't a bad way to play either. So you punch with the Y button and shoot projectiles with the A button. You can jump with B and hitting it again will allow you to fly around. There's also a claw move with X you can unlock later, and you can use a shield with L and R. As you play the levels, you meet up with other Lantern members who give you special abilities and new attacks you can utilize throughout the game. These new attacks include a hammer and missile you can perform by holding down Y and B respectively. I almost forgot there's a ground pound you can use, and it does come in handy when I remember to use it, as I just demonstrated with my magnificent memory. There are 2 types of special moves, which include beefed up attacks and help from your lanterns. You have these double blades for the spin attack and a minigun for example, and for your lantern buddy, I'm not sure, I never needed to use this. The best attack that I used is the minigun, and even then I rarely needed it, which is something I'll get into later. There's also a heal move you can use by holding in both L and R, and this is also something I never needed to really use. In short, the gameplay is pretty decent. It controls really well, and I like freely moving around the air, which is already a step up from the HD game. Although I wish they incorporated the customizable moveset from its big brother, the abilities on display work well enough as intended. So now we're getting into my first major issue with this game, and it's repetitive. But let me talk about 2 factors that contribute to that. Let's start with the Manhunters themselves, who come in 2 flavors. There's flying ones and guys on the ground. They also have slightly different versions like snipers who can be annoying and robots who you need to kill with melee attacks. There's other aliens they introduce in other levels, but they're all just reskins, so variety is not the spice of life in this game. As you murder everything, you get currency which you can use to buy upgrades. Besides health, you want to focus on leveling up your melee and blaster since everything else is not really needed. With all that knowledge, my first real problem with the game is that it has a negative difficulty spike. And it happens not even an hour into the game. I focused on my blaster first and almost immediately I was OP enough to where I didn't have to focus on any other upgrades and I could have finished the game just fine. Even during the tutorial, the Manhunters are super weak and they just become more of a joke as I kept playing. Not only does the game become repetitive, but it also gets extremely boring and every level afterwards just becomes a slog to get through. I hope you have some music or something on in the background because after a while it's going to become a necessity. I never thought a game being too easy would be something I'd be complaining about. Let's talk about the levels, shall we? There are 5 areas with about 3 sections apiece. While there's more planets than the HD version, they aren't really interesting. First we have Coast City on Earth, a space station on Mogo, which is lame, Overcron 6, which is a mining planet I guess, Ranks, which is a ship ripped right out of the Star Trek reboot, and finally Vega, which you unlock after beating all the other worlds. Most of what you'll be doing in these levels is destroying whatever machines the Manhunters have set up and take out the boss at the end of each. None of it is very engaging and sort of ties back to the whole repetitive issue I talked about earlier, especially when you can take out whatever they have in just a second. One thing that pisses me off about traveling to new areas are these flying space sections. They aren't a bad idea in theory, but what kills it is that your beams can barely hit anything, and there's a shitload of asteroids that are smashing into you as you're trying to kill robots. Oh, it gets worse. But we aren't there yet. There's collectibles you can get which range from constructs, which are just reskins of stuff you already do, dossiers, and these drones that award you currency. So you can go after these to upgrade faster? I guess that's a thing? I mentioned this game is Metroidvania-like, but more accurately, this is Baby's first Metroidvania. In each section of the level is a map you can find which will reveal where all the collectibles are. So it kind of takes away from that experience and makes the levels just a fetch quest if you're going for 100% completion. There's also save rooms in the form of these lanterns. Something the game doesn't tell you, however, is that it autosaves every time you enter a new section, so the lanterns are basically useless at that point. So for a game trying to be like Metroid, it doesn't do a good job with any of those elements. So now we come to problem number 2. After going through the 4 levels, you're informed that data cores need to be collected and that the Manhunters are planning larger attacks. So what that means is that you have to travel through each of the levels you were just at a second time.
What? Are you out of your mind?
The only differences you'll find is some new thing to blow up, and after that you help the level's lantern with some problem that they're having. I hate when games arbitrarily try to extend their runtime, and when it comes to games I've reviewed so far, this is the worst example. I understand that the game isn't very long and you want to try and find ways to keep it going, but this is not a good way to do it. The first run already got painful by the 3rd level, and your big idea was to make me go through each and every single area basically for no reason to unlock the final level? Whoever came up with this idea, I just want to take them to an abandoned area and put them down like Old Yeller. I mean, this is absolutely mind-boggling to me. I was honestly debating on canceling this review just because of how ass-backwards this whole thing is. But because I hate disregarding projects, I felt I had a duty to my subscribers and decided to continue along, I guess. If there are any aspiring game developers that happen to be watching this, do not do whatever the fuck this game did. You don't need to make your game long for it to be good. You should focus on making that game fun and give people a reason to come back and play it over and over again. I play video games to escape reality and enjoy myself and its world and its characters, not be frustrated and tempted to throw my console in the dumpster. Be amazing and keep gaming exciting and wonderful. I need to move on before I have another migraine. So after all that, you are able to access the final level, and after blasting through more Manhunters and killing the last boss that gets easier each phase, you save Sinestro, the galaxy is saved, and roll credits on this shitty game.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
So upon beating the game, you'll unlock a New Game Plus mode where the only thing it has to contribute are these weird green orb things you can scan and pick up. So now we come to problem number 3. Let's say you wanted to go for 100% completion hypothetically. You know, shit-tastic levels you had to play through twice? You gotta do that all over again, bringing the grand total to, drumroll please, 4 fucking times! Let's begin with the fact that with these levels being boring as fuck, the enemies aren't scaled up at all, and since you have all your upgrades at the start, you'll basically be immortal for your entire second run. They don't do anything to challenge you, which makes this mode just worse by comparison, since you're still killing the same enemies in one hit, over and over and over again. Also, they force you to pick this mode after the credits are done rolling, which is an idiotic decision by itself. So say you miss any collectibles from your previous playthrough, you gotta go through all the stages all over again just to get them. And let's talk about those new collectibles just for a second. They're all over the place, and just for fun, I want you to take a wild guess on how many there actually are. 30. In each level.
Look, this is fucked beyond belief!
This is just absolutely insane and completely ridiculous to expect the players to even go out of their way to even get these fucking things, and from what I remember, you don't get anything anyway for finding them all. I almost feel like the game is punishing me more and more for diving deeper into it. How did this even leave the playtesting stage, and what pinhead decided this game was worth putting out onto store shelves for people to pay actual money for? If I haven't made my point clear, do not, under any circumstances, even bother with New Game Plus. You should have already turned this game off and thrown it into the fireplace after skipping the credits. Anyway, let's move on from that fucking shit show and talk about the iOS version. Because mobile gaming was the big trend at the time, they of course made a port to put on the platform. I'm going to keep this very brief because I wasn't able to find a way to play this game, so I'm just talking over footage that is already on YouTube. So you know those flying sections I hated so much from the Wii version? That's the iOS game. It's not as bad as the Wii game's flying levels, but it didn't really give me the vote of confidence either. Honestly, I'm getting PTSD flashbacks just by looking at this. Other than that, there's not really much else I can say about this. It's a shitty phone port of a shitty Wii port of an already mediocre HD game. So usually I don't rate games just because, you know, it feels more of like a hassle than anything. But I kind of want to try something a little bit different with this series and, you know, show you whether or not, like, compared to the main versions of these games, whether or not, you know, this is, you know, worth playing or not worth playing. So I feel like you can already guess what my stance on this is. How can I best describe Green Lantern Rise of the Manhunters for the Nintendo Wii?
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
To me, this game is pure torture in every sense of the word. The story is basically nothing. The gameplay, while being fine, is nothing incredibly interesting. Collectibles are worthless, challenges almost non-existent. I hate the structure, I hate the bosses. This game is hate incarnate. I remember having a fine time with it as a kid, but after replaying it for the channel, I am physically hurt just by going through the 2 runs. Besides maybe doing a playthrough for the LP channel down the line, I don't want to ever think about this game in any capacity. If you happen to see this game no matter where it is, turn around and slowly walk away. Or more accurately,
Run, bitch! Run!
so yeah, that is going to be the end of this video. You know, I just want to thank, you know, for over 250 subscribers and still growing. We're almost at 300 by the time I've recorded this. Maybe we've surpassed it, I'm not sure. But I thank each and every one of you for making me want to continue on. And even though I've been gone for the last 2 months, and you know, I just can't thank you enough for the support and the outpour and all the, you know, the feeling that I get from you guys. So again, thank you so much. Yeah, it's the start of the summer. There's a lot of things I'm looking forward to working on. Hopefully we can put as much output over the summer, and the rest of the year is looking pretty good too. So I don't want to give anything away, but you're in for a treat. That's all I'm gonna say. But anyway, have a great night. Thank you all so much for watching, and of course, take care of yourselves.